Hit subscribe to the DIY Writer to support your hardworking authors and also lessen your chances of ending up as a victim in their next book. The world's largest UFO conference, Contact in the Desert, announces the launch of their 8th annual and very first virtual event. This event is focusing on UFOs and the year of science, also consciousness and the future. This will be held June 24th to 28th, 2021. Contact in the Desert is renowned for its top lineup of experts in the fields of ufology, forbidden archaeology, government disclosure, alien phenomenon, crop circles, and much more. Contact in the Desert already is the largest UFO conference in history and will now be the largest UFO conference in the virtual world, with over 60 lectures, 40 workshops, 11 panels, featured speakers presentations, virtual tours to Giant Rock, and other interactive events. Go to contactinthedesert.com for more information and get your tickets now. This is Jeff Bacon with the DIY Writer Podcast, live from the parking lot of a dentist shop, someplace in the middle of California. We're talking to Tiffany Collins. Tiffany, you know what? I really want to ask you how you're doing. How are you doing today, Tiffany? Tell me.
I am a kind of positive person, meaning I have this, I can do this. I just don't know how. Give me a minute. It's like I was saying before, it was like spring has sprung and suddenly my life went from being on full pause to full throttle. And I'm trying desperately to like, okay, website has to be a go by Monday. And that means I have to fill all the blank spots because I just gave it a huge facelift. I figured if I was going to do all this promotion, I was going to get a real awesome author website.
Yeah.
And that took longer than it was. I had to take a silent month on the promotion because certain things were moving faster and other things were crawling, and it was not jiving well. All the gears were slipping, and I'm like, okay, pause on marketing. I have no landing site for them to go to. And so it's like, I got to do that. I got to edit. I got my edits back, so I have to finish editing the next book and I have to publish that. And then I have to finish up on all the interviews. And I'm like, okay. And now I'm going back to work full time. I work at a library. I work for the Placer County Library System, which is great.
See, Tiffany, I think we need to back up a little bit.
Okay.
So Tiffany is the author of Reflections of a Runner and Darkwood, a Traveler's Journey Companion. And she has a third book coming out in June. And that's why we're talking about promotions and websites and all that other kind of stuff. Tiffany has an abundance of energy right now. We've been talking for a while and it's been great. And then all of a sudden it's like, we need to record this. What's that?
I'm actually sleep deprived right now because I'm on top of everything else. I'm also having to work on major yard projects. So yeah, this is me low throttle. You should see me when I actually am energetic.
Okay.
No caffeine either. How about that?
Wow.
Yeah. If you ever saw Over the Hedge, it's a kids movie. It's about a bunch of wild animals that subdivisions kind of encroaching on their thing. And at one point, the raccoon, who's the mastermind of the crew, gives the hyperactive squirrel caffeine. And suddenly the world slows down. The squirrel is moving around like everything has stopped. And he's the only one just kind of like going for a little ambling walk. Like, yeah, that's me. Don't give me caffeine. I'm not squirrel, okay?
Yeah. Beautiful. So let's go back and talk about your book again.
Okay.
Your first book, Reflections of a Runner. What was your inspiration behind that?
That one, all of my ideas start small. And then they grow to gigantic, epic proportions. It starts with questions. I love questions. More importantly, I love answers. If I could get one wish from a genie, it would be that I'd have the answer to any question I asked. My head would probably explode. That would be the second wish. Please let me be able to contain that information. And if nothing else, I'm very forgetful. So as soon as I get the answer, cool. And then 5 minutes go by, squirrel. And all that information just bleeds right out of my ears. And then I'll be like, wait, what am I forgetting? And that would make my head explode.
But you can ask the question again because you have unlimited questions.
No, it's like, okay, so for that one, it started with, okay, I wanted to create a character who was kind of, it's definitely fantasy, so there's magic involved. And she's one of those people who's essentially a human familiar. Another magic user can utilize her to expand and refine and better use their own magic. which does not sound like much fun for the person being exploited. And so it then became, it's like, well, is this like a one-off thing, or are there more people like Danny and this is a societal thing? Is it something where it's legal, or is this something that happens on the underground? And so it's like the whole world of Danny built up around this character that I kind of created when I was 16 years old, a freshman in high school, writing in a fan fiction website. She went to bed for a while, and then I wrote Nisi's story, and it came back to Danny, and then everything really changed, and I changed everything. But really, you'll see a lot of elements that you recognize because I'm lazy. I decided, okay, this was a thing that was legal, and it was like bedrock of the society she lives in, and it's all about her trying to break free of that and change things for the better for people like her. And I'm thinking, okay, that sounds like slavery, cool, but there's so much slavery in human history. Pick a culture at some point, and there was slavery there. So I didn't have any lack of inspiration on that front, but I'm like, what has been the most documented? Because obviously this is going to lead to a civil war, and then there's going to be the fallout. I have no idea what events lead up to a war like that. I have no idea. I don't have any military background. So I'm like, I don't want to have to spend the rest of my life researching things that people go to four-year college to get like masters and bachelors and doctorates in. I want to write fantasy, but I'm lazy, and my logical brain won't let me just invent crap. So I decided, you know what, the Civil War, the Underground Railroad, the Civil War, and the Reconstruction were very well documented. There's lots of material, easy to find, lots of people to talk to who all had that interest. So if I want to talk to a person and get ideas, so basically the story is going to follow that kind of story arc, but just throwing lots of magic and lots of fun mythical creatures and the Tuatha De Danann, which are at the base root of all fairies kind of thing. But I like to take things back to the origins of a thing rather than other people's interpretations of. So yeah, that's Danny's, and it just became this huge, massive story that I'm probably going to need 20 books to cover all of it. Yeah, I can't ever keep anything small. It just gets huge. Nisi's was originally going to be a short story I wrote with a friend.
Oh, really?
That's to a 130,000 word novel. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So I can't ever do anything small. Yeah.
So you're up there in California. One of the things that we were talking about a little bit before we started recording were I found it really interesting, was the drought that's going to happen again this year, because you guys are terribly dry up there.
No April showers for our Mayflowers. Yeah. Yeah, it's like when your lakes and your reservoirs that are meant for your drinking water and sanitation and everything else is already at record lows, and we're still in spring. And normally you see Folsom down real low, and it's because it's August, September, October. But this is the middle of April, and already Folsom is looking pretty pathetic. And I'm sitting here thinking, I am so glad I don't rely on Folsom for my drinking water, because they're going to have problems this year. And we didn't get the snowpack. So it's like, while I'm trying, this is part of the reason I write fantasy fiction, along with all the civil unrest and the rest of the country and the world and all the crap that happens out in the world that makes me, I'm just going to write my own world. I'm gonna go play with people that I like, and if I don't like them, I can kill them. It's cool. And it's like I don't have to worry about. But the other thing is like to take my mind off the fact that any minute now we could be told to evacuate because a fire is about to burn down everything that we have in this world. Yeah. And insurance only covers so much, and it really doesn't help you in the very short term. And more fire insurance companies are going out of business because of bankruptcies for things like Paradise, an entire towns in California, not last year, but I think the year before that, burned to the ground. Yeah. And all those people were insured, and the insurance company actually had to pay out. I know they hate that. They like to take your money. They never want to actually pay out. They'll find any reason to say no. So now what's happening is they say, oh, you live with trees. Yeah, we're not going to cover you. If you live with a tree on your 1 acre, you're not going to get any insurance coverage. And if you don't have insurance coverage, you can't get a mortgage from a bank. So all these people that would love to buy homes can't, because And if you can get it, it's going to be really crappy coverage, and it's going to cost 4 times as much, and it's going to be more than your mortgage payment. So it's fun owning houses up here. And ours was built in 1988. We love it. We've done a lot of work to it. My dad and my mom built it themselves. If that place burned down, oh my God, that'd be soul crushing. So I write to avoid all this because I can't do anything more than what we already do. So I'm gonna dive into my fantasy world and write that and play with my friends in my head. Yeah, and I'm just gonna ignore that we're going into summer. I'll be happy again when we get the first rains in October. If it ever rains again, I don't know.
If it ever
It might
rains
never
again.
rain again.
Yeah, it's probably gonna rain all summer.
Well, yeah, that's the difference. It's like back east and Midwest, you guys get all the rain. Send some our way. We could really use that rain. Not to mention we provide like 2/3 of the food of the United States and California. We kind of need the water for that.
Well, yeah. you guys, have a lot of produce out there, which I gotta tell you, I haven't been real happy the way you guys have been producing. You guys need to do something better down there.
Well, you give us some water and we will happily provide for you.
No, you just deal with what you get.
Well, as it is, okay, here's a fun fact about California. Okay, so we're drought prone, right? But there are these underground water reserves. I know everybody knows about the water table. That's where a lot of people on wells get their water, but this is different. This is from the previous ice ages. All that ice been trapped underwater, right? And people have been drilling for oil. And so in lean water times, okay, we can't divert any more river water. The river waters are turning green with algae because there's so little in it already. So Southern California said, we need more water. Northern California is like, we can't give you any more, or we end up like the Colorado River did for Mexico, which is it doesn't meet the ocean anymore because we sucked all the water out of the river before it could. So we know a little bit more about ecology these days. We don't divert so much water that the rivers no longer meet the ocean and screw up entire regions of territory. So they've been drilling for this water. Okay, well, nature abhors a vacuum. What happens when you suck out all the water from a giant cavernous space under your feet? It sinks. Yeah, so they're dealing with that.
Should be no problem with that. Sinkholes are fun.
Yeah, so it's like no, the ground is literally caving in under people's feet in some areas because they've sucked out so much water, and that water never comes back unless we're going to have another ice age and we're going to trap another one after a few more million years. So it's like that's a very short-term plan for a long-term problem. We're still working on it, and that's the nice thing about writing fantasy and having magic. I like magic. I can create magic band-aids for all these problems that we haven't figured out ourselves. I'm like, yeah, that's a problem, and I know too much about science to just ignore it because I'm like that. I would be terrible to watch an X-Men movie with or the Hulk or whatever, because I'm sitting in there watching all these superheroes who are supposedly normal human beings who are then exposed to massive radiation. And I'm like, they don't get super mutant powers, they die. Okay, their hair falls out, their skin sloughs off, and they basically become giant tumors and then die. They don't get mutant powers. And no mutant power is going to let them do this that you're saying it's doing. I'm very technical. That's why even though I write fantasy and I'm writing an alternate history in which I can say history fell out however I wanted it to, my brain will not let me do that. So I'm doing more history homework to satisfy this. Or when I was writing the kitsunes, they are living like a native people off in the woods, right? So my brain was like, okay, how do you survive in the woods naked kind of thing? Most survival books, by the way, assume you have a first aid kit, a knife, and a bunch of other equipment already. I'm like, no. I'm talking somebody lets you drop from a plane into the middle of like the Rockies and you're expected to survive. How do you do it? And I actually found one. It was written in the 60s by a bunch of hippies who wanted to live really off the grid. And they're assuming you had nothing. And so I did all that research, and for the kitchen's purposes, I found out fun fact, most animals have enough brains to create a tanning solution to tan their own hide. I also know you can make a water container out of a bear's bladder if you smoke it correctly. Yes.
Yep.
Because everybody should know how to do that.
You know what's funny is I've got books on that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it's like for my character's purposes, I've also done things like I never got very good at it, but I learned violin. I studied that for about 7 years. I also got my black belt in Taekwondo. So a lot of the martial art things that my characters do is kind of based on my experiences there. And we used to do a lot of mixed martial art things where other people from different traditions would come, and we would do kind of a round table where they would expose us to a little bit of some of the best techniques of their art, their martial arts. And one guy in particular had a technique where he would be able to just kind of a light casual slap, right? Really loose wrist slap. No big deal. Didn't look aggressive at all. And it would drop his assistant to the ground on his knees like he'd been stunned. Somebody poleaxed him between the eyes. And I'm thinking, whatever, he's a shill. That's not real. Do that on me. I want you to do that on me and see if that happens. So I volunteer for this thing that could technically, I mean, he says that you got to do it in like a certain place on the middle of your back, because anywhere else could risk internal organ failure. So of course I volunteer for this. And so he does it. Yeah. And he kind of does this, and then he goes on your back. And I swear to God, I bent over, you know, I'm like this, and I present my back, and I'm leaning over my knees, and I'm like, okay, whatever, this isn't going to do anything. And then I find myself on my knees, and I don't know how I got there. I'm like, what just happened? Oh my God. There was no pain. It was just one moment I'm standing, leaning over my knees, and the next I'm on my knees on the ground thinking, what? So it was real. Oh my God. So it was all those it's a little bit inspired by kung fu movies, but actually a lot of that stuff is also based on real things. There's another guy who basically, a guy threw a punch at this instructor, and he hit certain points all from starting from like the wrist up his arm to his chest. And he says you have to be careful with that, because if you do it wrong, you could stop the guy's heart. And I'm like, oh, I'm not volunteering for that. Because that stuff's real. It happens. Oh my God. So yeah, I have a lot of fun, but there was a few things that I won't do. Like I volunteered to get blind drunk. I've never been so drunk that I have puked, passed out, can't remember the next day, and have a really bad hangover. So one day I work Renaissance fairs, and they like to drink. They like to drink all kinds of fun things. And I know all the rules. You're not supposed to mix your booze. You're not supposed to mix beer with like, you're not supposed to mix like beer and wine or some liquor or something like that. You're not supposed to mix and match. Well, I went with the intent to get blind drunk, falling down, stupid blind drunk, puke, pass out, can't remember what I did the next day, and have this horrible hangover, right? So that I could write from experience. And I tried, and they came through for me, man. They're like, oh, we're gonna get Tiffy drunk. And so they brought me, I mean, I drank half a bottle of wine, I drank cider, I drank beer, I drank whiskey, I drank liquor. And then finally, when none of that was really making me more than just kind of like, okay, I'm feeling kind of drunk, I guess. John's like, fine, brought out the tequila, it poured me 3 shots of tequila. I went, bam, bam, bam. Finally, after midnight, I'm like, guys, I gotta work Sunday. This is boring. This is too much work. I'm going to bed. Drank a little bit of water, went to bed. And then my friend Abby, she's like, okay, Tiff is going to be so miserable, right? She did it so bad. And she comes by my car because I camp in my car. It's way more convenient than a tent. And she peeks in my windows, and it's like 6 o'clock in the morning. The sun's not even above the tree line. And I'm already reading my Kindle. I see her. I'm like, wave, cheery. And she's like, I hate you. I hate you. I'm like, sorry. But there, like I said, there's a few things I don't do. Like, for instance, in Danny's book, she goes through some pretty rough stuff. There's, to call it nicely, eugenics. But that's too polite a term for something where one of the participants doesn't get a choice. Otherwise, that's called rape. And I'm like, I'm not going to offer to get raped for writing experience. No. I'll do some research into like trauma victims for that one. I'll watch a lot of Special Victims Unit. It'll be fine. I did consult a psychologist who specializes in PTSD, though, and he assured me that how I was handling a character who went through major trauma is accurate. So I'm like, okay.
Okay.
But yeah, there's limits. I won't volunteer for anything.
Very cool. So what's your so you've got Reflections of a Runner and Darkwood.
Mm-hmm.
What's your next book? What's the title of that, or don't you have it yet?
Okay, so I told you I was lazy.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm lazy with my titles too. Coming up with names and coming up with titles is hard. It's miserable. I'd rather write the whole damn book over again. So Reflections of a Runner. A runner is a slave who makes a break for freedom, right? So reflections and mirrors are a big thing in there because again, magic. But instead of having a lot of technology for things like this conversation we're having over a smartphone, how our TVs are this way, and so they have mirrors that do enchanted mirrors. So a little hand mirror, I can have a conversation with someone. I can take a picture. I can watch shows that are dreamed up by people who use dreams to create what we would call movies. We have traveling mirrors and everything. So mirrors is a big thing in her world. It's about as ubiquitous as technology and cars and everything we use in our world. And so Reflections of a Runner, the title was, I thought, a cool play on words, because Reflections of a Runner might say that she's telling this story in hindsight to someone else. So she's telling her story to Alice, who they're communicating through like an enchanted journal thing, very much like Riddle's Diary and Harry Potter, which I totally admit I ripped that idea out of the Harry Potter universe. I did. And so Danny is telling Alice about her exploits from when she was young up until current day. And so Reflections is her reflecting back on her past, but Reflections is also to deal with all the mirrors in there. So I have Reflections of a Runner for the first one. The next title is going to be Reflections of a Tigress, because how do you hide in plain sight in a zoo? And you can shapeshift. You're going to be an animal. So she takes that form to hide in plain sight in the next book, Reflections of a Tigress. And then the third book is Reflections of a Gladiator, which right there tells you kind of what the next book is going to be kind of about.
Gladiators?
Yeah. How about that? Wow. Yeah, I can't claim originality. I can't claim efficiency and multi-purpose.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. So in that one, you're thinking June-ish?
Yeah. Right now it's like I've given up on trying to create deadlines. Thank God I'm self-published, because if I were having to do this on a publisher's deadline, I might have more problems than I currently do. But it was like, God, the editing took way longer than I anticipated. The website, Facebook has taken a lot longer, but I think part of my problem is that I'm new to some of this, and that I don't have a realistic idea going into it of how long each thing should take. So that's probably the biggest thing screwing up my ability to plan and give hard dates for when things will happen. I would love that, because I like certainty. Certainty is a nice luxury.
So your website will be up by Monday, you said?
It will. Come hell or high water, that thing will be done.
Come up hell or high water. All right.
Come hell or high water, that website will be finished. At this point, I had a meeting with my web designer yesterday. He says, at this point, the only thing we can't do for you is provide content. It's cool. I got content. Now just give me the keys to Backstage so I can start uploading. And he's like, yep, anytime you want. So I am now. It's like when I get done here and my dentist appointment, I get to go home and start filling in my beautiful new website. Yeah. And get it all ready and spiffy, so that when we tell people where they can find me, it's ready. they have a place to go. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was looking at it earlier, and it's really a nice, beautiful shade of blue.
Does it have under construction?
Oh, no. It is Tiffany-Collins.com, and it says site coming soon. Build a website, sell yourself. Just asked me to log in. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's cool. We'll just find out where that's all at.
We're getting there. As it is, like I said, I had to kind of put marketing on the back burner for a little bit because they did offer me an option of a silent month. And at the time, I'm thinking, oh, I'll be able to keep up with this, no problem. I'm on COVID lockdown. I got all this. I'm getting full-time wages for part-time hours. This is awesome for a year. And I have to go back to work full-time this upcoming Saturday. And I'm like, I was really spoiled. And I'm like, oh, I got to be careful there because there's a lot of people who lost their jobs. And I am cognizant of that. I have a lot of friends who've been struggling mightily with the financial insecurity and uncertainty. And I've been sitting really pretty. And it's kind of like survivor's guilt. You're sitting there thinking, I'm actually really enjoying aspects of this. I'm kind of a hermit anyway. So the idea, I mean, I'm really hoping that the Science Academy in San Francisco is still around because I heard halfway through the lockdowns, they were saying we might not make it. And I'm like, no, I love my Science Academy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places that might cease to be because of this. But me personally, I had more time off to enjoy our beautiful yard that we put a lot of work into, keep it up to date, improve it some more, write, finish my book, do things like marketing. I keep getting stimulus money that I don't really need. So I use that to help friends who they needed the money more than me. Or I use it for things like promoting my book. And I got money I don't really need, but sure, let's throw it on the website. Let's throw it on here. So this is one of those times where not everybody suffered equally. Yeah. I was very lucky and I'm trying to make the most of it. And I'm very grateful, but I am kind of also spoiled because like I said, full-time wages and benefits with the county for part-time hours. Sweet. And I get random days off because my pod person, we're working in pods. So I had this Saturday off because my pod person needed to schedule her second vaccine. And she was going to take all day because she was going to get one that she knew was going to give her reactions. And that meant because my pod person couldn't work, I couldn't work. So they're like, hey, Tiff, you got Saturday off. I'm like, score. Okay, cool. and I'm like, hey, good news, exciting news, everybody. No more pods. And I'm like, damn it, no more free days off.
Yep.
Dang it. I have to actually work for my money.
Back to reality.
I know. Yeah, so there's all that going on.
There's all that. Yeah. So you got all that stimulus money and everything else. The thing I find funny about the stimulus money is that I looked at there's a guy out there that I follow who's kind of an economist, and he estimates that for every $1,000 that was given out, it's going to cost that individual $3,000 in taxes to pay off the debt that they issued for it.
We're Americans. We do debt and we know about interest. Nobody likes to think about it, but how much money, and this is why I don't usually carry debt because I've done math for myself. And I'm like, I got a loan for $100. And yet by the time I finish paying this off in 6 years, I will have paid $300. That's bullshit. I just wanted $100 and I will pay you back $100. But no, there's something called interest. And depending on the rate and whether or not it's fixed, you pay a lot. So it's like I go in on a fixed rate for my car. For instance, I have a very nice 4Runner. And it's supposed to be a 6-year loan in which I paid over $40,000. But I will pay that sucker off in 4 years because I don't want to pay that additional 2 years of interest. Credit card companies must hate me because that's how they make their money. They assume that if you rack up $600 on your credit card, you'll be making payments in which they'll get some interest money out of you. No, $600. I don't spend anything on a credit card. I don't have the money to pay it off at the pay period end. So I don't like paying interest. So I understand that all that stimulus money, yeah, we're going to be paying interest on that. It's not going to be a good rate either.
Nope. Thank goodness the government sets the rate so that in our tax rates, so we can just, cover their ass, but whatever.
Well, to be fair, my friends actually really did need that money. There's people like me who never lost their jobs, but I know a ton of people who actually really needed the help.
And I don't have a problem with the people getting the money. It's the all the organizations and all the money in that bill that went out of the United States that really ticked me off.
Well, yeah.
all the political crap that
I'm
happened.
going to steer this back to books because we were about to dive into politics.
Oh yeah.
I
Well,
don't
you started with the stimulus stuff.
I did, and I'm redirecting.
All right, you redirect. Let's get off of this political crap.
I'm redirecting because I don't even talk politics with my family and very few friends. I'm like, I have learned in the last 3 or 4 years, it's like, no, they don't need to know. You don't need to know. And you can't even really talk about the weather anymore without it getting political, which is sad. But it's like wherever possible, I avoid it. In fact, I just played. Are you familiar with Magic the Gathering?
No.
Okay, it's a very nerdy game. But it appeals to my overactive brain that never shuts off, and it's a very complex game. So it's got cards, and if you look at Magic the Gathering cards, there's a lot of really good artwork. And in fact, the guy who did some of the artwork for my website, it turns out he doubled his price. So I went from having a 1,500 piece of artwork to a 3,000 piece of artwork. So this hick from California, rural 49er minor town, is now an art prospector who has valuable art. Go figure. But anyway, he always wanted to do artwork for Magic the Gathering. Some of the cards are really gorgeous, and the rules though are very literal. So if you look at the text on each card, it tells you how the card is to be played in the game. And one thing really nice about that game is it takes so much brain power to focus and play if you have a hope of winning, that you cannot, unless you're some super genius, have any brain power left for anything that was pissing you off, anything that was making you stress out, anything that might have led to fights between you and your friends because you disagree on certain points. None of that has any room in that game because it takes every ounce of brain matter you've got to make the cards do what you want and win. And so I was like recently at a promo draft, a new set was coming out, and my friend John convinced me to go. That was before I realized I was under such a tight crunch, and now I'm thinking, oh, I could have used that day for so many other things, but it was worth it because I got to go hang out with a bunch of people, and all we did was talk Magic, and it was cool because it meant that we had fun rather than get bogged down in crap that you can't do anything about, really.
Cool. What was that called again?
Magic the Gathering.
The Gathering.
It's a card game. You need dice, you need tokens, and you need cards. And some of the cards are very cheap. Other cards, like if you ever find a card from Magic the Gathering, like somebody's doing a yard sale and they're clearing out their stuff from when they were a kid in the 80s or 90s, right? Mm-hmm. And they were really into Magic the Gathering around 92, 93, and they had a bunch of the original alpha set, and it's got hard, pointy corners, and it's ugly as sin. Okay. That card is probably worth 4-digit figures because those cards are tradable like baseball cards.
Oh, really?
And these people are willing to pay high 4-digit figures for some of these cards. I'm like, that's insane. It's a laminated piece of cardboard, and the artwork is shit. But some of the newer artwork is very cool. And right now it just breaks. John is my friend, and he's the one who really wanted to get me into this game. He's a collector. He cares about the value of things a lot. And here I am playing with cards that are worth like $80, $60, $90, and I'm shuffling them like they were regular playing deck cards. And he's just like, do you want sleeves? I will give you sleeves. Please don't shuffle that card. It's a Kratos behemoth that's worth like $80.
That's
you know
funny.
What that sliver deck you have it, you just brutalizing with a rubber band. You know what those slivers are worth? And I'm like, I don't care. They're playing cards. I'm playing with them.
Give me that card.
He spilled his propane tank with selling off some of his cards, so there's real money in them.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how crazy some people are about their games. I'm going to move out of the sun. Okay. There we go.
I almost am afraid to ask, Tiffany, what else is going on?
What else?
What else?
Oh, God. Well, okay, so I'm trying to plan out the third book, right? And I'm trying to edit this one. Here's my problem as a writer. Not everybody has this. I've got another friend, Ryan. He writes. He's a pantser. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that term.
A pantser, yes.
A pantser. A pantser is someone who flies by the seat of their pants. They start writing and the story evolves as they write. And sometimes they'll write whole chapters and then realize this isn't working and chuck it and rewind. I'm like, oh God, no. Or they'll write, I want to write this scene right now. And so they write this scene. Oh, now I feel like writing this scene that happened like 2 scenes before this. And they put it all together like a puzzle afterwards, part of the editing process. And then they have to scrap more and write more because things didn't fit together very nicely. I'm very much A, B, C, D. Everything in its proper order. I can't skip ahead because what if I run into a problem here and I realize I have to change all of this? And it's just so much easier to work in a linear fashion for my brain. It's very orderly. It has to be. Everything has to make sense. And I can't skip ahead because I don't know for a fact that that's going to happen the way it is or that it will actually stay. It would be a fun scene to write, but it might not be structurally relevant for the plot and it might take up too much word space because while I love a big fat book like Diana Gabaldon's Outlander series, screw George R.R. Martin. He's going to die before he finishes his, more importantly.
Give George a break. He's a tired old man.
And he's going to die. He's still working on the second to last book. He takes decades between each book and he's like, what, in his 60s, 70s?
He's got other things to do.
Besides, all he ever really wanted to do was write screenplays and see his stuff on a big screen. Well, hello, he got that now. So he only wrote novels because he couldn't make that initial dream work at first. Well, now he got his dream. And his pastime in between, I think, has probably lost its relevance since he's gotten what he's wanted. His stuff up on a big screen, big to do. The George R.R. Martin fans are going to be very sad. But anyway, his books are this fat. I love a big fat book. But as a self-published author, I found out a sad fact. I'm not constrained in word count by a publisher. I'm restrained in word count because Create Space, or no, now it's just any of the small print-on-demand presses that you're going to use as a self-published author can't produce those giant, big, fat books. Their printing presses don't handle it. So I am limited to basically a 700-page book about that. And so it's like I have to be conscientious of what I write because I have a hard time reimagining. If I've already written one thing, it's hard for me to scrap that and go back to the drawing board and come up with something different. It's torture. So I'd rather get it right the first time because I don't want to mentally torture myself. So I'm trying to plan out the third book as I'm editing this and doing all this other stuff. Like I said, my brain has multiple gears spinning and it never stops. Which means I don't always sleep very well, hence the sleep deprivation. Yeah. And as I'm doing this, it's like I need 3 lines to stick in the current book I'm editing that refers to a John Brown kind of character. I don't know if you're familiar with your Civil War history and stuff, but John Brown led Harper's Ferry assault, which was one of the key kickoffs to the Civil War. Well, Harriet Tubman, who I'm using as kind of like, a lot of my characters are loosely based off of real people or historical people. Again, I'm lazy. And as like I'm writing this character and then I'm doing all my research for the books and I come across Harriet Tubman. Of course, she's a big name. Everybody knows her. But I read a whole book about her and I'm like, dude, see, look, this is Danny. And it's possible somebody actually did it. So it's not too fantastical to say that you had someone who Harriet Tubman was famous because she was a woman who was an abductor who rescued over 90 slaves, sometimes in batches from down deep in the South over the border. She would actually go into enemy territory, grab people, pull them out. Normally on the Underground Railroad, if you're helping someone, it's because they've escaped, they've made their own way to you, and you're just giving them provisions and you're giving them directions because they don't know geography, they don't know where they're going or how to get there. And you're saying, oh, you need to go talk to this person over here that'll help you out further on your next leg of your journey. And that was most people's role in the Underground Railroad. Harriet Tubman was different. She was what they called an abductor. She actually she lived up north at some points in Canada, but also in like Pennsylvania and places like that. And then she would go down into the South. She would find people who wanted to escape but didn't yet. And then she would guide them out. And the fact that she was a woman was exceedingly rare. Abductors themselves were rare. And the fact that she never lost a passenger was something that would seem almost unbelievable given the time and circumstances she was operating in. And so when I'm writing Danny and I'm writing, and I wanted a character that did something like that, and I'm thinking, nobody's gonna believe that she did that. And then I read the Harriet Tubman book and I'm like, yes. And she really liked this John Brown guy. They were very similar minded. And she was supposed to go with him to Harper's Ferry, but I can't remember what circumstances prevented her. Like she got ill or something like that and couldn't go. Well, it was a good thing because I was doomed. And he ended up losing everything and getting executed. And Harriet Tubman lived to ripe old age. So it worked out better for her in the long run. Mm-hmm. But if I'm following that timeline, I had to write this John Brown character in there. And I'm like, God, I got to come up with a name. And in my world, we still have all of Rome never converted to Christianity. So Rome never went out and said convert or die 300 years after the conversion. And Rome, therefore, kind of made Europe kind of homogenous. Whereas before you had the Celts and later you had the Vikings and you have the Slavic tribes and you have all these ancient cultures. I really love the ancient cultures. And I wanted to see what would happen if you left them alone to kind of evolve and do their own thing. And so I'm like, well, is he a Celt? Is he Native American? Is he this? I have to invent this character all for 3 lines, Sirius, kind of like in Harry Potter again. You never really knew who Sirius Black was, but he was mentioned in the first chapter of the first book. Hagrid mentions that Sirius Black lent him his flying motorcycle, and that's all you know about the guy until book 3. So I'm kind of doing something like that. I love the series that embed lots of clues in early books. And then if you're a rereader like me, I reread stuff all the time. Harry Dresden. Harry Dresden is Harry Potter on steroids for adults. Okay. If you like the intricacy of the Harry Potter world and all the plot details that J.K. Rowling threw in there, then you would really like Harry Dresden. And instead of doing it for just 7 books, he's doing it for 20 plus books and an epic trilogy at the very end. And he is my idol. I will worship him. So I'm trying to do something along those lines. And I was like, for 3 sentences that mention him, like Sirius Black, I'm having to do so much homework and world development because I don't know this John Brown character. I'm like, crap, I got to invent him. And all the while I'm trying to create another thing for the Gladiator book. And like, I need more time. Let's go. Can we do another lockdown?
You've had a year. Knock it off.
I know, but I need another year.
That's
yeah.
funny.
How about you? What are you doing?
I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do my podcasts, and I've got some other things that I do, and then I've got quite a few books that I'm working on that I sent out to an editor, and he said I'll work on them again. So yeah, we're in the editing process of things right now. So
I've been lucky so far. 3 books. It's just 3 books. There's a lot, and I'm constantly learning. I look back at Nisi and I think, okay, that was a great first effort and people really enjoy it and stuff, but it definitely had room to grow. And I've been told that I continue to improve, but so far it's like I've been really lucky. I think that every time I kick this, the latest book off to my beta readers and my editors and stuff like that, they come back and say, okay, you need some tweaking here and blah, blah, blah. But nobody's ever told me, yeah, you need to rework the whole damn thing. I'm like, although I will say Nisi's book, I carved out an entire novel's worth of stuff and restructured the entire plot because at the time I was still kind of considering what word count it should be. And now, like I said, I'm used to reading big fat books. So the idea that I had to keep it under 100,000 words, and I was projecting that this might be a 200,000 words like Voyager. No, actually, Voyager was more. Voyager was like 300,000 words. Wow. But anyway, I had been shopping around for editors, and each one had told me, because they all charge per word. That's another good reason to keep your word count down, let me tell you. And they were saying, yeah, okay, here's what the total is going to be. But more importantly, no editor is really going to pick you up if you've got a 200,000 word novel. And I realized that the way it stood, I was going to have to like really work it. So I had to change a lot of plot and logistical points in Nisi's book. And to be fair, it did make for, I think, a better book in the end. So I was really glad I did that. But I really hate that whole reworking process. So I'm sorry for you. I really am.
I'm not.
That
I
sounds
switched
miserable.
editors, and this new guy that I have is he's brutal, and I love every minute of it. You know, and he
Yeah.
doesn't let me get away with one damn thing, and it's like, oh, okay, you know,
Yeah.
and it is you know, I've got a bunch of stuff back from him. They keep on reading. It's like, you know, he's dead on a lot of stuff. Other stuff, it's like, yeah, I don't, you know, don't
Yeah.
necessarily agree with him, but I can rewrite that so it's more along the lines of what he's thinking. And you know, as far as the structure and everything else, but it's really, I don't know. I'm really happy with what he's turned back, and it's like, yeah, I can do a better job.
Yeah.
We can all get
For
better.
me, I had a few moments where I don't know about how long it takes you to work out a book, but there were scenes that I really wanted to write and look forward to writing. Nisi's book took me 11 years. Now, before you think I'm that slow of an author, remember I was going to college to be a vet tech. So at one point I was doing 2 different colleges. I was getting my black belt in Taekwondo. I was doing rent fairs on the weekend. I was learning the violin, and I was working part-time at the vet clinic. And so it was like the fact that I also got a novel written, I think is actually pretty cool. But there were scenes that I put off for a long time because I wanted them to be perfect. Perfect. Perfection does not exist. Finally, I got to the point where, like, I've been thinking about the book for 11 freaking years. I just want it to be done. Write it. It can be vomit on the page. I don't care. That's why you're paying an editor. The editor will help you fix it. Just get words on the page and get it out.
Yep.
And so I did that. And there was like 2 scenes in which I whipped it out. And I'm like, he's going to say it's utter shit. I don't care. I'll fix it. But at this point, someone else can look at this and tell me, okay, this is how you can make it better. Okay, that's why I'm paying you per word. Oh my God. And he came back, and without prompting of any kind, I didn't like single those scenes out with comments or anything. I didn't say, can you help me with this part? I just gave him the manuscript and waited for feedback. And in his email, I was like, okay, I looked it over. And by the way, I really like these 2 scenes. And I'm like, oh, it's the puke scenes. Okay. Apparently it's good. So I've really taken lessons from that guy's feedback. And he was like, yeah, these 2 scenes I thought really stood out. And I'm like, I didn't tell him ever. I'm like, I thought you were going to tell me I needed to completely rewrite that because I just anyway. So now I'm like, Tiff, it doesn't have to be perfect. Perfection doesn't exist. Remember, some of your best writing apparently happens when you don't give a shit about what you're putting on the paper. So yeah, lessons learned from my editor.
The creative flow, you cannot underestimate it.
Right. Yeah, and at another point in Nisi's book, I wrote her into, I mean, you're supposed to torture your characters, right? You're supposed to put them into these situations in which you have no idea how they're going to get out. That creates tension, right? It creates stress. People, it's a page turner. People want to know, how do they get out of this huge problem that you put them in? And I got her there, and I'm like, okay, mission accomplished. She's in this place and these circumstances. I'm like, okay, now how the hell do I get her out of it? And that was one of the scenes where I was like, Tiff, you just get words on a page, just whatever. You work it out in the editing process. Just write something, get this book done. I want to get to the end. And as I was writing it, I just let that creative process go. And I swear to God, it was like an out-of-body experience. Words are happening, and I'm reading them as they're appearing. And I'm like, who's coming up with this? Because this is really cool. And wow, I didn't even think about this. Well, apparently I did. I mean, I wrote it. But it was like,
Some
it was
thinking had to happen
experience.
someplace, yes.
Yeah, it's like it happened randomly. This is what the Panthers probably you have happen to them all the time. For me, it's few and far between, but it was a really fun experience to kind of have some other person right through my fingers, and I'm just sitting there reading it as it's happening, and I'm like, oh, well, yeah, of course that's going to happen. Yeah, this is cool. Yeah.
Cool. So we're kind of running to the end of the program here today, or the show. Have anything else you want to tell your readers or fans, or anybody else who happens to be listening?
God.
Putting you on the spot here. Come on, beautiful California, where you at?
You would think I'd have a lot of practice on this because almost everybody ends, whether it's a blog interview that I'm writing out or it's an interview like we're having, it's like everybody always asks me, is there something else? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm an Aquarius. And that pretty much says everything you need to know
that
about me.
explains everything. I wish you would have led with that. Holy cow, we would have totally restructured this interview for an Aquarius.
Well, no, seriously, it's like whatever you might think about astrology, whether it's total phooey or you're really into it, I don't care. Read the description of an Aquarius. And maybe no one else fits their description as well as I do. But if you read an in-depth analysis of what an Aquarius person is like, that's me. That's all you need to know about me. I'm an Aquarius.
It is uncanny on how some of those descriptions just match. I mean, it's just like, yeah, that is kind of me, not necessarily to a T, but pretty doggone close.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The fact that we get along great with crazy people and kids. I love how those two are grouped together.
Well, that's because of the same.
Fabulously with them.
Yeah.
We are both the geniuses and the insane people of the zodiac.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. And we're the absent-minded professor. Yes, thank you. Yeah, just read it about Aquarius. That's all you really need to know about.
I'm just a simple Sagittarius, so.
My friend John, the one that's in the magic. You guys are the friendly people. You guys get along with a lot of different people in the zodiac. I get along better with other Aquarians. We're like the only zodiac sign that actually gets along best with our own kind.
Yeah, we just Sagittarius people. We just like people. Kind of. Well, maybe not. I don't know.
No, as far as I can tell, Sagittarians they're people.
They're people. They're a people's people.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. Very cool. Well, with that, I think we're about done here. So, you know what? When you release your book, let me know, and I'll put it on my website.
Okay.
For kicks and giggles, and I'll make sure that before I post this podcast, that your website's up and running by Monday.
But it will happen. It will, because I don't do social media, so there's no website. There's no way and I love to talk to people about books, any books, my books, other people's books. But yeah, it's like, because I don't do social media, that website is gonna happen.
All right. Well, I'm just saying, Monday I'll be looking.
Okay.
I'll be sending you an email if it's not. It's like, okay, we're gonna delay you for a week. You got one more week. But
yep.
All right. Other than that, I hope that you have a wonderful time at the dentist.
Yeah, I get to have x-rays and they get to tell me, oh, yeah, you need a crown here, you need a bridge here. No, my teeth are not that bad, but it's never fun to get x-rays and then I'm like, all right, hit me with it. What do I need to do?
Those dentists.
Thank God for county dental benefits. Woo!
With that, I'm going to say thank you very much for your time that you gave me today. It's been beautiful backgrounds and everything in nice, dry California. Yeah,
well, we do have pretty parking lots. That's true.
You do. You really do. It's
beautiful parking lot.
This is Jeff with the DIY Writer telling you have a great day and keep your chin up. Everything's going to get better. All right.
Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Please hit the subscribe button. I get a bonus for every subscriber, and I only need 1,506 more to become a full-time paid employee. Help me, please.